Let's look at verse number 1 of chapter 6 of Daniel. And it pleased Darius, or Darius, to set over the kingdom 120 princes, which should be over the whole kingdom. And this Daniel was preferred above the presidents and the princes because of excellent spirit was in him, and the king thought to set him over the whole realm. And so Daniel was second only to Darius the Great, the emperor of Persia. He was the only one that was above Daniel in all of this. And Daniel ruled with distinction, as we all know. Verse number 4, and when the presidents and princes sought to find occasion against Daniel concerning the kingdom, but they could find no occasion nor fault, for as much as he was faithful, and neither was there any error or fault found in him. Then said these men, we shall not find any occasion against this Daniel, except we find it against him concerning the law of his God. Then the presidents and princes assembled together to the king, and thus unto him King Darius live forever. And all the presidents of the kingdom, and the governors, and the princes, and the counselors, and the captains have consulted together to establish a royal statute. And it made a firm decree that whoever or whosoever shall ask a petition of any god or man for 30 days, save thee, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions. Now, let me explain the background of this, okay? King Darius had a dream, in which he was a dreamer. He had 117 dream interpreters on his staff and in his royal court to interpret his dreams. And Daniel was not one of those, but Daniel had already made his reputation about dream procrastinations and interpretations, and so he was above them all. And the king could go to him whenever he wanted to. But Daniel was very dedicated to his God. And as we know, Daniel would open his window and he would face Jerusalem every day, 3 times a day, and pray. Well, they couldn't find anything to get him on, so they said, we'll get him on this. And what had happened is that Darius had a dream, and in that dream, the primary god of the Persians, Marasta Arahas, and the god of war, Benahashian, were together. And both of them together bowed down to Darius. And as they were bowed down, then he lifted his hand like this, and then he woke up. And all of his dream gazers and interpreters had no idea what it was all about. And he was kind of angry about this. The dream took place in mid-February, and he was trying to determine what it was all about. And so these counselors and these presidents and governors all got together and said, this is our opportunity. We are going to get this Daniel once and for all. So they put together a story, a very convincing story, one that was shared with and then adopted by the dream translators also. And this is what it said. He said, O king, our gods, the god of war, our primary god, Masa'aret, has given you power that no one else has ever had. The gods of the Egyptians bow to you and tremble at your name, as do the people of Egypt that you conquered. The Babylonians' God tremble at you. The Assyrian gods tremble. The Edomite gods tremble. The Hittite gods tremble. The Phoenician gods tremble. The Jewish gods tremble, as do the people, because you are mighty, you are great, and we have given you that power. And so he said, because of this, then our God has granted you a very special opportunity. He has exalted you. They have exalted you to the position of mediation. And that for the next 30 days, until April the 6th, the day of Inesu, the day of the sacrifices to the god of war, the lion-headed god of war, then for the next 30 days, only you will have the ability to grant petitions. And so any man who wants a prayer answered, any woman who wants a prayer answered, anything that needs to be done in the realm of prayer must come through you. Well, Darius was an egotistical monarch anyway. He felt like that, he walked the earth as a god, as it was. So this really, really stroked his ego. Really stroked it. So he signed a petition. It sounded good to him. No one can go to any god. The Egyptians can't pray to their gods. The Jews can't pray to theirs. The Hittites can't pray to theirs. The Greeks can't pray to theirs. The Indians can't pray to theirs, except I give them permission to do it. That sounded like a good idea for the next 30 days. But in reality, when he signed it, the other counselors and presidents knew that this is the death warrant of Daniel. Daniel knew what the order said. He knew exactly what the consequences were, but he was faithful to his God anyway. He continued to bow before his God 3 times a day. And sure enough, as was planned, and as was assumed would happen, Daniel was arrested. Well, the king could do nothing about it. Up to that time, the April 6th celebration each year to the war god, there would be about 1,000 sacrifices made from enemy, Babylonians captured in battle, Egyptians captured in battle, and that type of thing. They would be offered to this god at the Den of Lions. Now, all of us have seen Rembrandt's painting of Daniel in the lion's den. You got 2 lions there. He's petting one of them, and all of this. But let me explain to you a little bit about the Den of Lions. Okay, I've seen it. I've been there to excavate. I've measured it, the ruins of it, and it was quite amazing. The Persians were quite tame, so to speak, as far as the ancient world's army was concerned. Because for more than 200 years, the average soldier of the Persians never drew a sword. Never. Because all their fighting was done by the company of lions. This consisted of 50 leopards and over 1,000 lions. The leopards loved horse meat. They hated human meat. By medieval times, the infantry took the lead in assaults. And then the cavalry would come up next, and the archers would come in wherever it's needed for them. But in the ancient world, the cavalry was first. The horses were the impactful. They were the Sherman tanks of their day. And so they would make their assault first with the chariots and with the cavalry itself. And what the Persians would do is that they would release. Okay, they would hold these animals on on long poles. They had a collar around their neck, and the pole was about 12 feet long, and they would hold them at arm's length like this. And then when it was time for them to attack, they would just release the pole. And the leopards were released first because the leopards absolutely loved horse meat, but they hated human meat. And so they would release these leopards, and they just went totally berserk. And they would pull down the horses and pull down the horses on the chariots and the cavalry and pull those horses down. And the men that were riding them, they were left without their mounts, and they were just vulnerable. And they were out there by the hundreds just trying to figure out, what do we do now? And then that's when the lions were released. And the lions loved human meat. And these lions would be released, and they would cut through the enemy line just like a hot knife through butter. And Persia conquered all the way from India to the Mediterranean, and from the Cassius Mountains to present-day Kenya, and very seldom ever took their sword out of their scabbard, because the lions and the leopards did all the work for them. They held them in what the Bible called the lion's den. It's called the Vyasa Kazin. It was a facility that was approximately 300 feet long. And this facility, being about 300 feet long, is also about 60 feet wide. And it stood to the roof. It was about 18 feet to the roof. And they had sides, earthen sides. So it was kind of like you had a roof, and then it looked like just inside of a hill, basically. But on the roof, you had ventilation places that you could open up, and that's how you fed the lions, and that's how you put the sacrifices back down in there. And then they had one gate, one door. It was a bronze door in the front, and it had a type of a thing that narrowed down like this from the gate in the front until the gate where one lion or one animal could go through at a time only was about 50 feet. And so the walls would channel these animals. They opened up the bronze gate to the facility, and then the animals would come like this, but then they would narrow down to one at a time. And then at that point, then they would receive their collar and receive the pole to guide them. And then they would guide them out to the field. Now, once the animals were full and they were very satisfied, they would become very docile. So the soldiers would just come up and put the stick back on them and lead them back into the den without any threat of being attacked, because they were full. They were not hungry no more. Now, the lions were kept hungry pretty much all the time, especially if there was going to be a battle anytime soon, and so they were very ferocious, especially when the time came to make sacrifice to the god of war. April 6th was that day, that special day that was given. And April 6th was the day that Daniel had been chosen to be the ultimate sacrifice to the ultimate god of war at this particular day. So no longer on this year would there be 1,000 captives or prisoners given to these lions. This year was specially set aside for Daniel, and only Daniel. And can you imagine one man against 1,050 hungry beasts? You wouldn't even get about a mouthful. And so there was would have been tremendous conflict and a tremendous fight for control of that morsel of meat. Darius couldn't do anything about it. Daniel was arrested. Now, the Persian history says that Daniel spent his days from the time of being arrested until the time he was placed in the den of lions. He was kept in a private prison that was in the palace of King Darius, which is probably true. And so for the next 20 or so days, then Daniel was arrested, certainly relieved of his position, and all the other presidents and governors and counselors, they were just tickled to death because now this Daniel is out of the way, allowing us to have our way now for a change. Finally, it was time for Daniel to be placed in the den of lions. You know, the Persians had done a remarkable job with these lions and with these company of lions in their conquest of the world. They would have continued to dominate the world had it not been for Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great paid a trader, the equivalent of what is now, in today's money, about $2 million, to feed the lions poisoned meat. And so when it was time for the army of Persia to meet the armies of Alexander, they didn't have the lions with them. They were all dead. And the Persians didn't know how to fight. And Alexander just mopped up his army of 38,000, put to flight an army of 1 million Persians because they didn't know how to fight, because the lions had done it for them for so many years. But now's the time for Daniel to begin to make preparations for be presented into the den of lions as the ultimate sacrifice to the Persian gods of war and to the Persian gods that the people worshipped. I'm sure Daniel sought the Lord on what to do. I'm sure he was expecting something. Maybe he was expecting a big wind to come and blow down the den of lions. Or maybe John Wayne to come riding across the hills with the Cavalry to rescue him. Or maybe something as simple as just changing the heart of the king. Or something as simple as the document kind of, you spilled a glass of wine on it and you can't read what it says anymore. Or anything. Daniel was this close to God that he could pretty much dictate what he felt needed to be done. But when the day arrived for the consequences to be dealt with, he had not been delivered. Seeking the Lord, asking what to do, what direction to take. And then the time came, and Daniel had not been delivered. Lord, I asked you to come here at 8. It's now 5, and now it's too late. Daniel was not delivered from that den of lions. He had to go in there. And he had to go into that to face not only the 50 leopards, but the 1,000 starving and hungry lions. And now you can understand why Darius passed the night without any sleep, wondering what had happened, wondering and waiting. From looking at the present day archaeological ruins, the ancient ruins are left. It was a good 15 miles between the Den of Lions and the royal palace at Susa. So it wasn't as if the king could go check on it a few times a night because it was too far away. But when the sun came up the next morning, then the document that put Daniel there was now expired. Now, even the king couldn't change the decree. It was forbidden. Once it was done, it was done. But once the decree had been satisfied, the new decrees could be made to neutralize the other. And that's what happened in the case of Esther, okay, with the Jews being killed. So now the decree had been satisfied. Daniel had been placed in there. But now comes sunrise. Verse number 18. Then the king went to his palace and passed the night fasting. Neither were instruments of music brought before him, and his sleep went from him. Then the king arose very early in the morning and went in haste to the den of lions. And when he came to the den, he cried with a lamentable voice unto Daniel. And the king spake and said to Daniel, O Daniel, servant of the living God, is thy God, whom thou servest continually, able to deliver thee from the lions? Then said Daniel unto the king, O king, live forever. My God has sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths, that they have not hurt me, forasmuch as before him innocently was found in me, and also before thee, O king, have I done no hurt, or I've done nothing wrong. God did not deliver Daniel from the den of lions. But what he did do is that he walked with him in the midst of it. He was there with him. And because he was there with him, then the lion's hunger was satisfied. God made sure that that angel said, okay, guys, lay down, you're full now. Just pass the time. You know, in our lives with dealings with God, with what he wants us to do, with what he has for us to do, about our families, many things. It's so easy for us in our minds to tell God exactly how it works. Now, Lord, the bank. I have a meeting with the bank at 9 o'clock this morning. So this gives you 14 hours from now to make it right. To change the heart of the banker, to change the rules, the regulations, to make my account look like 110,000 rather than 1,000. And I stand on your word. As a matter of fact, I'm going to put my Bible on the ground. I'm going to stand on it. I'm literally standing on your word. Well, the meeting comes and goes. And we walk out. God, where were you? You obviously weren't with me today. And then it continues. And the deliverance is not there the way that we pictured it, the way that we had designed it, and the way that we had diagrammed it up here. But then we discover something a few days later. We discover that no, God didn't honor your design. But you know what? He was with you every minute. Every conversation that came out of the mouth of the banker, of the attorney, of the assessor, God knew what they were going to say because he was directing their thoughts. But one thing is absolutely sure. Your God will always be with you in the very midst of the situation. I don't know what you're facing today. What is your den of lions? Is it a sickness? Maybe. A disease? Perhaps. Marriage difficulties? Possibilities there. Legal problems? Maybe. Lawsuits? Maybe there's something with family members that are just not working out the way they should. You may not ever see the victory the way that you envision it happening. But know this, even though he does not deliver you from the lion's den, you have to go through it. You have to file those papers. You have to suffer the consequences and perhaps even suffer the ridicule. Daniel was ridiculed throughout the world as a traitor, as a malicious breaker of the decree of the emperor of the world. And he had to live with that stigma. But God was with him every minute, every step of the way. And then God had the ultimate victory. As Darius made a decree, and the decree is in the same chapter. And let's look at verse number 26. And this is the decree that was made. I make a decree that in every dominion of my kingdom men tremble in fear before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and steadfast forever. And his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed, and his dominion shall be ever unto the end. He delivereth and rescueth, and he worketh signs and wonders in the heaven and the earth. And who hath delivered Daniel with the power of the lions, or from the power of the lions. And so, God may not deliver you, but he will be with you.